Thank you for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Yeseul Lee, who exhibited recent works from her series Tasting Grace at the 2017 Baccalaureate Exhibition at North Dakota State University. Tasting Grace is a series of paintings that illustrate the revelatory moments of an individual's spiritual epiphany. The works are representational, surreal, and oftentimes humorous in their exploration of faith, identity, and transcendence. Yeseul will be speaking with us today about her creative process and her ideas on grace, spirituality, and food. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. Well, thank you so very much, Yeseul, for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist. I was curious if you could tell us about a few of the religious icons that you referenced in your work.
One of the most obvious one is the one that I used for the donut piece called When I Try to Be Holy. I referenced the halo from a lot of religious works in the past where they chose to use halo to represent holiness, and so I kind of flipped that idea of holiness where I used the halo to make fun of holiness and how we perceive holiness, and so that's how I used it.
Okay. I was curious why this isn't, or why you don't consider this sacrilegious to use like food as a religious icon, or sort of to make this sort of like satirical?
I'm in a place where I want to challenge the audience and myself to think what holiness really means. It's not about rules where we go to church every Sunday or having no sex before marriage, or all of these rules that we think it's what holiness about, but I believe that as Christians we are holy because of who God is, not because of what we do, and that's the idea that I wanted to communicate with the audience, that holiness isn't about like what we think it is or what we want it to look like.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's interesting because we often connect sort of what's sacred with icons, and so you're sort of recontextualizing icons.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to sort of recontextualize what's sacred in a way. So each of your work speaks to some sort of transformation, and like I can see this in the popped corn, or the donut that's not quite whole, but you're also looking at the body. So I was wondering what the difference is between the body and the food.
So the body represents expressions and emotions that I've went through for my spiritual life, whereas food represents more of fun way and new way that I wanted to approach religion or Christianity or gospel, because that's what I've been researching over the last 4 years in college.
There's in many of the sort of rituals that when you go to church, you actually consume something. Is that also part of this sort of discussion, or is it separate?
For the milk piece, the piece called Prince of Peace, it does represent the nourishment of our body, where peace is provided from God, but I think I was also using the characteristics of food, where popcorn, it just pops things away, and I wanted to show that somehow of how astonished I was through God's experience through that I had with God.
Mm-hmm. The colors in the background give a certain type of atmosphere. So I was kind of curious how people were reacting and interacting with your work because of that addition of the color. It's not just the forms and what's going on, but you have a mood that's sort of set through those colors. Can you talk about maybe about how you chose those colors, how people have been reacting to them?
I think the pastel tone colors does provide that calmness and steadiness that I wanted to represent of what I've been experiencing in my spiritual life. So I think a lot of the people that I talked to, they did have that same experience that I was hoping them to have.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I noticed is that there is a decision that you've made that most of the work is sort of portrait-driven. If you look at the woman, she looks like she may be nude, and so it's the portrait, like the human figure, and the food as a combination. And I was curious why you chose to crop so closely in, and sort of what did you leave out? What sort of decisions were you making at that time?
I didn't want to include clothes because then I would be adding another aspect in the paintings, and I decided to choose close-up of a human to show the intimacy that I wanted to represent in the spiritual experience that I've been through.
Okay. Did you look at this as a series, or did you look at them as independent paintings?
I wanted them to work as a series of work as well as individually, because I am telling a story, but then I am telling individual or specific God's characteristics that I understood from my experience.
Okay. And as this series develops, or is there something or some sort of direction that you're thinking about going with this, or are you still reflecting on that right now?
I would like to come up with more paintings and expand on the idea of combining food and spiritual life or spiritual emotions. So I am researching more into that too.
Okay. Well, at the end of the sort of discussion, we like to ask a couple questions about sort of your creative practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious what time of day you feel like you're most creative.
I say whenever the assignments are due, the day before assignments are due is the day that I feel most creative.
Okay, so you're very driven by time
Yeah.
and the crunch of time. Okay. Do you listen to music or anything like that when you're painting?
Mm-hmm. I do. I usually listen to classical music because otherwise I'll be singing all the songs that I'm listening, and it gets pretty tiring if I try to sing and paint at the same time.
Okay. Unless you're doing a music video. So is there anything that you're reading right now?
I'm reading the Bible, the book called First Peter, and it's been teaching me how to be disciplined more, as I just mentioned that I do things with crunch timelines, so I'm learning to not do that.
What do you think the most challenging thing is about working in your medium?
Sometimes if I wanted to work fast, or even if I wanted to work fast, I have to wait a little bit because oil paint doesn't dry as fast as other painting mediums, so it had taught me to be patient.
And how do you know that you're finished with a artwork?
I think when I'm satisfied with it, or like it feels right, that's when I know it's done.
No. And then I guess my last question would be, what's next for you?
I'll be going to graduate school here at NDSU for education, and so I'm hoping that I'll learn how to teach art well, so then I can share the things that I've learned over the last 4 years in college.
Well, good luck. So I'd like to thank you, Yeseul, for your time, and I'd also like to thank you all for your interest in the professional practice and creative explorations happening here at North Dakota State University. So for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.